With only $100, I left home. I came back years later, a billionaire. They thought I would forgive them. The night I left, it was raining. My father's words still echo in my head, like razors against my skin. Either you marry Robert Wilson's son, or you're no longer a part of this family. I stood in our grand living room, frozen in disbelief. My mother sat silently on our plush velvet sofa, eyes fixed on her perfectly manicured nails. She wouldn't even look at me. My younger brother Tyler smirked from the corner, already calculating how much more attention he'd get with me gone. Dad, I can't marry someone I don't love. I don't even know him. I pleaded, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not about love, Amber. It's about securing the future of this family. The Wilsons' company would merge perfectly with ours. This marriage has been planned since you were children, he said coldly, swirling the whiskey in his glass. I'd spent 30 years trying to gain their approval. Graduated top of my class, earned my MBA, worked 80-hour weeks at the family business. But nothing was ever enough. Tyler was always the golden child despite barely passing college and showing up late to meetings. The rules were different for him. I've given everything to this family, I said, straightening my back. But I won't give up my entire future. My father's face hardened. Your brother understands loyalty. You've always been selfish, Amber. Always thinking about yourself instead of what's best for the Morrison name. My mother finally spoke, her voice thin and practiced. Darling, be reasonable. The Wilsons are a good family. You'll learn to love him eventually. The same line she'd been repeating in her own marriage for 30 years. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the emptiness behind her eyes. That's when I knew I would never become her. I'd rather leave with nothing than stay and lose myself, I said. My father laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that bounced off the marble floors.
Fine.
Then leave. He pulled out his wallet, took out a single $100 bill, and tossed it onto the coffee table. Here's your inheritance. Good luck surviving without the Morrison name. I thought he was bluffing. I really did. Even when I picked up that bill, even when I walked upstairs to pack a bag, I kept waiting for him to stop me. For my mother to defend me. For something to change. But 30 minutes later, I stood at our front door with a single suitcase. My father blocked the exit, holding out his hand. Your credit cards and car keys. They belong to the family. I handed them over, my hands trembling slightly. Dad, please. You made your choice, he cut me off. Don't come crawling back when you realize how hard the real world is. As I stepped out into the rain, my mother called out, Amber, don't be foolish. Just apologize and stay. But I couldn't. Not this time. I glanced back one last time and saw Tyler standing behind them, already wearing the expression of an only child. The gates of our estate closed behind me with a definitive clang. I had no car, no phone, they'd paid for that too, and nowhere to go. Just a suitcase, the clothes on my back, and that single $100 bill burning a hole in my pocket. I walked 3 miles in the rain to the bus station. My designer shoes, the last remnants of my old life, soaked through and blistering my feet. I caught the last bus to downtown, not knowing where I'd sleep that night. For the first time in my life, I had no safety net, no backup plan. As the bus pulled away from the curb, taking me away from the only home I'd ever known, I pressed my forehead against the cool window and finally let myself cry. Not just for what I was losing, but for what I had never really had, a family that loved me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. I didn't know it then, sitting on that bus with $100 to my name, but that painful night was actually the first day of my freedom, the beginning of everything I would become. And they would live to regret it. The first night was the hardest. I ended up at a 24-hour diner, nursing a cup of coffee until sunrise, watching the clock tick by painfully slow. The waitress, Darlene, according to her name tag, kept refilling my cup without charging me. Maybe she saw something in my eyes, some desperate edge that told her I was counting every penny. You okay, honey? She asked around 3 a.m. when we were the only ones left in the place. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I'd never been not okay before. The Morrisons didn't show weakness. Well, if you need a place, there's a women's shelter 3 blocks east. She slid a card across the table. They're good people. I wanted to tell her I didn't need charity, that I had an MBA from Wharton and, until yesterday, access to a trust fund worth millions. But all I had now was $93.75 after the bus fare and coffee. Pride is expensive when you're homeless. That first week, I stayed at the shelter. I slept with my suitcase strapped to my body, jumped at every sound, and cried silently into my pillow each night. I applied for every job I could find, but without references or a phone number, doors kept closing. My designer clothes, increasingly wrinkled and worn, became a liability rather than an asset. They screamed, "Doesn't belong here," without telling the full story of why. By week 3, my money was gone. I sold my pearl earrings, a gift from my grandfather, to a pawn shop for $200. The owner knew they were worth thousands, but also knew I had no choice. "You running from something, girl?" he asked, counting out the bills. "Starting something?" I corrected him. On day 22, I landed a job waiting tables at a cafe near the financial district. The irony wasn't lost on me, serving coffee to people in suits identical to the ones hanging in my closet back home. Sometimes I'd spot someone from my father's circle, and I'd hide in the kitchen until they left, heart pounding. The shame was suffocating. One morning, a woman came in wearing paint-splattered jeans and a vintage t-shirt, laptop open, sketching furiously on a digital pad. She looked completely out of place among the suits and ties. She ordered the same thing every day, black coffee and avocado toast, and tipped generously. "You have a good eye," she said one day, catching me glancing at her screen. "Most people just see chaos, but you were looking at the structure." Her name was Maya Chen, a designer who'd started her own sustainable fashion company 5 years earlier. After a week of small talk, she asked if I was looking for other work. "I need an assistant. Someone organized who can think on their feet." Interested. It wasn't glamorous, mostly organizing samples, scheduling meetings, and fetching coffee for someone else instead of serving it to strangers, but it paid better than the cafe and included a tiny room above her studio. At night, after Maya left, I'd stay and use her computer. I started teaching myself to code, pulling up tutorials and forums. The idea that had been growing in my mind since college, an algorithm to optimize energy consumption in manufacturing, began taking shape in lines of code. Maya caught me one night, hunched over the keyboard, at 2 a.m. "You're full of surprises, Amber Morrison," she said, leaning against the doorframe. I flinched at my last name. "Just Amber." She studied me with curious eyes. "You're running from something big, aren't you?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Well, whatever it is," she gestured to my code. "This looks more interesting. Tell me about it." So I did. For the first time, someone actually listened to my ideas without dismissing them, without comparing them to Tyler's, without measuring their worth only by potential profit margins. 2 months later, Maya introduced me to Elijah Grant, a venture capitalist who specialized in green technology. He looked over my primitive prototype and asked questions nobody had ever bothered to ask before. "This has potential," he said finally. "But you need resources, a team." "I don't have money," I admitted. "I don't have connections anymore." "Everyone starts somewhere," he shrugged. "I'm hosting a pitch competition next month. Winner gets seed funding and mentorship. You should enter." That night, after he left, Maya handed me a glass of cheap wine. "To new beginnings," she said, clinking her glass against mine. I smiled, thinking about how far I'd come from that rainy night with just $100 in my pocket. I wasn't okay yet, not by a long shot. I still flinched when my phone rang, fearing it might somehow be my father. I still had nightmares about being dragged back to that house, forced into a life I didn't choose. But for the first time, I could see a future that was entirely my own. What I didn't know then was that 6 miles across town, my brother Tyler was being named the new CEO of Morrison Industries. I didn't know he was already making deals that would eventually drive our family's century-old company to the brink of collapse. And I certainly didn't know that 3 years later, I'd get a desperate message from him, asking to meet, saying he needed my help, just as my own star was beginning to rise. I won Elijah's pitch competition. Standing on that small stage, Explaining my algorithm to a room full of investors was the first time I felt truly seen. Not as Frederick Morrison's difficult daughter or Tyler's overshadowed sister, just as Amber, a woman with ideas worth hearing. The seed money wasn't much, $75,000, but it might as well have been millions to someone who'd been counting pennies for coffee. Elijah helped me set up Sustain Tech, a small company focused on reducing energy consumption in manufacturing processes. We rented a tiny office above a bodega and hired 2 engineers fresh out of college. You need to be careful, Maya warned me one evening as we shared takeout in my new apartment, a studio smaller than my old walk-in closet, but mine, paid for with money I'd earned. Once you start getting attention, your family might notice. I'd thought about that. Changed my professional last name to Jenkins, my grandmother's maiden name. Kept my face off the company website. Turned down interview requests. I'm not hiding, I told her. I'm just buying time. The truth was more complicated. Part of me wanted them to see, to recognize what I'd built without their name or money. Another part still flinched at the thought of facing them again. A year into building Sustain Tech, our algorithm caught the attention of Greenfield Industries, a mid-sized manufacturer looking to cut energy costs. Their CEO, James Greenfield, was an old-school businessman with a surprising commitment to sustainability. "My grandkids deserve a planet that isn't burning," he said during our first meeting. "And if we can save money while saving resources, even better." The implementation was successful beyond our projections. Greenfield's energy costs dropped by 32%, and word spread quickly. Within 6 months, we had contracts with a dozen manufacturing companies. I hired more engineers, rented a real office, and finally bought myself a phone that wasn't secondhand. Elijah pushed me to think bigger. "You've proven the concept. Now it's time to scale." We developed a more comprehensive system, not just monitoring energy usage, but actively optimizing it in real time. Patent applications were filed. Investors started calling instead of us calling them. 2 years after leaving home with $100, I closed our first $1 million funding round. The night we signed the papers, I sat alone in my office long after everyone had left, thinking about how far I'd come. I'd never been motivated by money. That was my father's obsession, but the validation felt like a shield against the past. Then the email arrived. I almost missed it, buried among congratulatory messages and meeting requests. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." Tyler's company email address was unmistakable, though he'd never used it to contact me before. The message was brief. "Amber, I know we haven't spoken. Things at Morrison Industries are complicated. I need your insight on something important. Can we meet? Just you and me, no parents involved. Please." My finger hovered over the delete button. 3 years of silence, and now he needed something. But curiosity won. I responded with a time and a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, far from both our offices. I arrived early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. When Tyler walked in, I barely recognized him. My confident, arrogant little brother looked exhausted, the designer suit hanging slightly loose on his frame. "You look good," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "What do you want, Tyler?" He flinched at my directness, something our family never valued in me. "How's your company doing?" he asked instead. "You didn't ask to me to discuss my business." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so like our father's that my stomach tightened. "Morrison Industries is in trouble," he finally admitted. "Dad made some investments before stepping back that aren't working out. And He trailed off. "You what?" I might have continued down the same path. I could read between the lines. The company was failing under his leadership. Why come to me? I'm the disappointment, remember? The one who left. Pain flashed across his face. "I never called you that. You never defended me either." He looked down. "I need your help, Amber. Your technology. It could save our manufacturing division millions." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same idea my father had dismissed as unrealistic years ago could now potentially save his company. "Send me the data. I'll look it over." I stood to leave. "Amber," Tyler called as I turned away. They don't know I'm talking to you. Mom and Dad, they don't know how bad things are. I nodded, unsurprised. Appearances had always mattered more than reality to the Morrisons. What Tyler didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Sustain Tech was about to announce a revolutionary new system that would change everything. We had big investors circling, interest from international markets, and a valuation that would soon hit billions. And for the first time since that rainy night, I was ready to step out of the shadows. 5 years after walking out of my parents' house with $100, I stood on a stage at the Global Sustainability Summit, announcing Sustain Tech's newest innovation, an integrated system that could reduce industrial energy consumption by up to 60% while increasing production efficiency. The applause was deafening. Our stock, which had gone public 8 months earlier, jumped 27% by closing bell. I was no longer hiding. My face was on business magazines, my story, carefully edited to exclude family details, shared as an inspiration. The woman revolutionizing green manufacturing, they called me. How does it feel to be a billionaire before 35? A reporter asked at the press conference. The same as it felt yesterday, I answered honestly. The work matters more than the money. What I didn't say was that every milestone felt incomplete somehow, haunted by the family that had once told me I would amount to nothing without them. Maya, now Sustain Tech's creative director, squeezed my arm as we left the stage. You did it, Amber. Everything you said you would. I smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd reviewed the data Tyler had sent after our coffee meeting. Morrison Industries was indeed in trouble, worse than he'd admitted. Their manufacturing processes were catastrophically outdated, burning through cash and resources at an unsustainable rate. But their problems went deeper than inefficiency. Later that evening, I sat in my penthouse apartment, staring at my phone. The text from my mother had arrived during the summit, the first direct contact in 5 years. Amber, please call. It's important. No congratulations on the summit. No acknowledgement of my success. Just another demand. I was about to ignore it when my assistant called. Ms. Jenkins, there's a Frederick Morrison asking to speak with you. He says he's your father. My heart stuttered. Put him through. His voice sounded older, more strained than I remembered. Amber. Dad. Silence stretched between us. 5 years of unspoken words. I saw you on Bloomberg today, he finally said. Your technology, it's impressive. Coming from him, this was practically effusive praise. Thank you, I replied cautiously. I think we should talk. In person. About what? He hesitated. Family matters. I almost laughed. We're not family anymore. You made that very clear. Things change, Amber. Yes, I agreed. They do. I changed. I built something without the Morrison name or money. I know, he said, surprising me. That's partly why I'm calling. And there it was, the truth behind the sudden outreach. Not because they missed me. Not because they regretted what they'd done. But because I had become valuable to them. Morrison Industries is struggling, I said flatly. His sharp intake of breath confirmed it. Tyler told you. He showed me the data. It's worse than he knows, isn't it? Another pause. We've had some setbacks. Translation. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. And now you want my help. We want to make amends, he said, not quite answering my question. Your mother it's been difficult for her, not having you around. I thought about my mother, who had sat silently while my father threw me out, who had never once reached out until now. I'm busy, I said. The summit has me booked solid for weeks. Amber, please. Just dinner. At the house. Next Friday. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let them feel a fraction of the abandonment I had experienced. But another part, a part one wasn't entirely proud of, wanted to walk back into that house as a success on my own terms. Fine, I agreed. Friday at 7. After hanging up, I sat motionless, watching the city lights below. I had imagined this moment countless times, my family realizing what they had thrown away, reaching out, begging forgiveness. In my imagination, I had felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. The next morning, I asked my team to compile a comprehensive report on Morrison Industries. What they delivered was grimmer than I'd anticipated. The company was 3 months from insolvency. Tyler had made a series of disastrous investments, trying to expand too quickly. Their core manufacturing business was bleeding money due to inefficiency. Banks were refusing additional credit. I recognized my father's signature moves in the strategy: aggressive, risk-heavy, focused on quick returns rather than sustainable growth. The same approach that had built the company was now destroying it. That afternoon, while reviewing acquisition projections, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Morrison Industries stock plummets 45% after failed merger attempt. I clicked through to the article. Morrison had tried to merge with Wilson Enterprises, the very company my father had once tried to connect with through my marriage, but the deal had fallen apart at the last minute. The market was reacting brutally. The phone rang again. Tyler, his voice tight with panic. "Did you see the news?" he asked. I did. "Amber, we're in free fall. Dad's having health issues from the stress. Mom's falling apart. We need your help now, not next Friday." I closed my eyes, thinking of all the times I had needed them. All the times they had chosen Tyler, the business, appearances over me. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "I know we don't deserve it." I thought about Maya's warning years ago, about the scared young woman who'd slept in a shelter, clutching her suitcase, about the family who had thrown me away with $100 and now wanted me back because of what I had built, not who I was. "I'll be there tomorrow," I said finally. "But Tyler, this isn't going to be what you expect." As I hung up, I made a decision. I would return to the Morrison estate, not as the prodigal daughter seeking forgiveness, but as Amber Jenkins, CEO of Sustain Tech. And I would make them face exactly what they had lost when they chose to throw me away. The gates of the Morrison estate swung open automatically as my car approached. 5 years later, and they still hadn't changed the security code, my birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd chosen my appearance carefully. A tailored black suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Professional. Powerful. Nothing like the tearful young woman who had stumbled down this driveway in the rain. As I pulled up to the house, I noticed Tyler waiting on the front steps, bouncing nervously on his heels. The door opened before I could knock. "Thank God you're here," he said, his voice low. "Dad's in his study, with the lawyers." "It's bad, Amber." I followed him inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old money washing over me. Nothing had changed. The same crystal chandelier, the same family portraits lining the walls. Except now there were no photos of me. In the main living room, my mother sat perched on the edge of the sofa, a tumbler of amber liquid clasped in her perfectly manicured hands. She looked up as I entered, her eyes widening. "Amber," she breathed, standing unsteadily. "You look professional?" I supplied. "Successful." Her smile faltered. I was going to say thin. "Some things never changed." "Where's Dad?" I asked Tyler. "Right here." My father's voice came from the doorway behind us. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders slightly stooped, his face lined with stress. The confident patriarch I remembered was fading. "You came," he said, something like relief in his tone. I nodded once. I said I would. An awkward silence fell. 5 years of absence stretched between us like a chasm. My mother broke it first. "Should we have dinner?" "Rosa prepared your favorite." "I'm not here for dinner," I cut in. "I'm here because Tyler said you needed to talk urgently about the company." My father's expression hardened slightly. Always straight to business. At least that hasn't changed. He gestured toward his study, and I followed him inside, Tyler trailing behind us. The mahogany-paneled room had been the center of Morrison power for as long as I could remember. How many times had I stood before that imposing desk, being told I wasn't measuring up? Spread across it now were financial statements, legal documents, and what looked like layoff plans. The empire was indeed crumbling. "How bad is it?" I asked, though I already knew. "We have 6 weeks before we default on our loans," my father admitted. The Wilson merger was our last hope. I picked up one of the statements, scanning the figures. These projections are optimistic at best. That's what our CFO said before he quit last week, Tyler muttered. What do you want from me? I asked directly. My father and Tyler exchanged glances. We need a loan, my father finally said. A significant one. I raised an eyebrow. And what would I get in return? We're family, my mother interjected from the doorway, where she had been hovering. Family helps each other. I turned to her slowly. Family? You stood by while he threw me out with $100. She flinched. I called you the next day. You didn't answer. Because he took my phone, I said, gesturing to my father. And by the time I could afford a new one, you had all made it clear where I stood. That was a misunderstanding, my father said stiffly. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet room. A misunderstanding? You disowned me because I wouldn't marry a stranger for your business interests. I was angry, he admitted. I shouldn't have, it went too far. Too far. I echoed. I slept in a homeless shelter. I sold my grandmother's earrings for food. I worked 3 jobs while building my company from nothing. Silence fell again. Tyler looked genuinely shocked. Apparently, they had never bothered to wonder how I had survived those first months. But you overcame it, my father said, a note of pride in his voice that made my skin crawl. You proved yourself. And now you can help save what generations of Morrisons have built. I looked at each of them. My father, seeing me as a financial solution but still not fully acknowledging the damage he had done. My mother, who had chosen comfort over defending her daughter. Tyler, who had enjoyed his promotion to favorite child at my expense. I'll consider it, I said finally, on one condition. Anything, Tyler said quickly. I want to see the full books. Everything. No edited statements, no hidden accounts. I want to know exactly what I'd be getting into. My father hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Tyler will get you whatever you need. As we worked through the night, the true extent of the disaster became clear. Morrison Industries wasn't just struggling, it was imploding. Years of poor decisions, outdated practices, and Tyler's inexperience had created a perfect storm. Around 3 a.m., my brother brought me coffee in our father's study, where I was still reviewing documents. I'm sorry, he said quietly, setting the mug down. I didn't know about the shelter, about how bad it was for you. I looked up at him. In the harsh desk lamplight, he looked young and scared, not the smug brother I remembered. Would it have made a difference? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. I don't know, he finally admitted. I was selfish back then. Relieved it wasn't me who got thrown out. At least he was honest. I'm not the same person anymore, Tyler. None of us are, he said. But you're the only one who changed for the better. As dawn broke over the estate, I reached a decision. I gathered the key documents and went to find my parents, who were having breakfast in tense silence. I've reviewed everything, I said, standing at the head of the table where my father usually sat. And I have a proposal. They looked up at me with desperate hope in their eyes. They had no idea what was coming. I'm not offering a loan, I said, placing my proposal on the table. My father's face tightened. Then why are you here? I'm offering an acquisition. I kept my voice steady, professional. Sustain Tech will purchase Morrison Industries. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's teacup froze halfway to her lips. Tyler stared at me, wide-eyed. Absolutely not. My father finally sputtered. This company has been in our family for generations. And you've run it into the ground. I replied evenly. You have 2 options, sell to me, or declare bankruptcy within 6 weeks. Your choice. This is revenge, he accused, his face flushing. No, I corrected him. This is business. The same business you taught me always comes first, even before family. My mother set her cup down with a clatter. Amber, please. We're trying to make amends by asking me for millions with no strings attached. I raised an eyebrow. That's not making amends. That's using me. We're not using you, Tyler protested weakly. When did you reach out to me? I asked him directly. Was it before or after you realized my technology could save your manufacturing division? He had the decency to look ashamed. I thought so. I continued. None of you contacted me when I was struggling. None of you reached out when Sustain Tech made its first million. You only called when you needed something. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I will not sell my father's company to you or anyone else. I gathered my papers calmly. Then you'll lose it completely. The banks won't extend your credit. Your investors are pulling out. Without intervention, Morrison Industries will cease to exist by summer. You would enjoy that, wouldn't you? He snapped, watching everything I built collapse. No, I said truthfully. I wouldn't. That's why I'm here. Tyler cleared his throat. What are your terms? My father shot him a furious look, but Tyler held his ground. Dad, we need to hear her out. We're out of options. I outlined my offer. Sustain Tech would acquire Morrison Industries at a fair market value. We would implement our energy-saving technology across all manufacturing plants, saving millions annually. Most importantly, we would save jobs, nearly 3,000 employees who would otherwise be laid off. And what about us? My mother asked quietly. You and Dad would retain honorary board positions, but no decision-making authority. I met my father's gaze. Tyler would have the option to join Sustain Tech's executive team, conditional on completing our management program. You want me to work for my own daughter? My father's voice was incredulous. No, I said simply. I want you to retire. This offer is better than you deserve, and significantly better than bankruptcy. I stood to leave. You have 48 hours to decide. My mother followed me to the door, catching my arm before I could exit. Amber, wait. Her voice trembled. We miss you. Not your money. Not your success. You. I looked into her eyes, searching for sincerity. If that were true, you would have called years ago. Outside, the morning air was cool and clean. I felt lighter somehow, unburdened. Whatever they decided, I had stood my ground. I had faced them as equals, no, as their superior, and hadn't crumbled. The next day, I was in a board meeting when my assistant slipped me a note. Tyler Morrison, on line 1. Says it's urgent. I excused myself and took the call in my office. We accept, he said without preamble. All of you? I asked, surprised by the quick response. Mom and I convinced Dad it was the only way. He sounded exhausted. He's not happy, but he signed the papers this morning. I hadn't expected it to be this easy. I'll have my team draw up the final contracts. Amber, Tyler hesitated. Thank you for not letting it all fall apart. After we hung up, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city below. I had achieved everything I'd set out to do, built a revolutionary company, become financially independent, and now acquired the very business that had once been valued above me. But the victory felt hollow somehow. 3 days later, I returned to the Morrison estate for the final signing. The mood was somber, like a funeral. My father signed the papers with a shaking hand, refusing to meet my eyes. Congratulations, he said bitterly, sliding the documents across the table. You've won. As everyone filed out, I remained seated, staring at the Morrison Industries logo on the contract. Was this what I had wanted all along? Revenge? Power? To make them sorry? I thought back to that rainy night, to the scared young woman with only $100 in her pocket. What had she really wanted? To be valued, to be seen, to be free to make her own choices. Dad, I called as he reached the door. Wait. He turned, his expression guarded. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said quietly. The company was going to fail no matter what. This way, something survives. He was silent for a long moment. I was wrong, he finally said, the words seeming to physically pain him. About you. About what you could accomplish. It wasn't an apology, not really. But from Frederick Morrison, it was monumental. I nodded once, accepting what he could give. I learned from you, you know. The determination, the focus. I just applied it differently. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite pride, but recognition. After he left, Tyler lingered, awkward in his uncertainty. So, I report to you on Monday? To Maya, actually. She'll be overseeing your training. He nodded, accepting his new reality. And Mom and Dad? They'll be comfortable, I assured him. Their shares will provide more than enough income. And us? Are we ever going to be? He trailed off. Family? I supplied. I don't know, Tyler. Family isn't just DNA. It's trust. It's support when things are hard. It's being seen for who you are, not what you can provide. I'd like to try, he said simply, to be better. I thought about Maya, who had seen potential in a desperate waitress. About Elijah, who had invested in my ideas when I had nothing. About the team I'd built at SustainTech, who had become more family to me than my blood relatives ever were. We can try, I agreed. But it starts with honesty, with seeing each other as we really are. As I drove away from the Morrison estate for what might be the last time, I realized something important. I hadn't gone back to prove my worth to them. I had gone back to finally completely prove it to myself. The girl who left with $100 had become a woman who didn't need anyone's approval. The true price of freedom wasn't the years of struggle or the loneliness, or even the hard-won success. The price was letting go of the need to be validated by those who had thrown me away. And that price finally had been paid in full.